Jonathan, let me just check, first of all, where are we going right now? We're going to go to Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, the birthplace of our Confederation, which is going to play such a major role in our broadcast later tonight. Jonathan Torrance, the host of Jonavision, is right outside Province House there. Things getting excited there in Charlottetown, Jonathan?
Absolutely, Peter. People here are a-tingle with anticipatory delight. This little island with the big heart, cradled in the waves of the Atlantic Ocean, braces itself for what promises to be a spectacular affair tonight. In fact, I've just been told that 17,000 people are expected to converge in the downtown area tonight to ring in the new millennium in the birthplace of the country, which is very exciting news. Also, some spectacular events coming up, a performance by island native Lenny Gallant, who's a singer-songwriter, really a cool thing. Also an attempt to get into the Guinness World Book of Records for simul-kissing. That's happening in Summerside. We'll tell you more about that later. But
No, I want to know more about that now.
The simul-kissing?
Yes.
It is an attempt to get into the Guinness World Book of Records by the most people kissing at the same time in Summerside. And this is actually an official attempt to get into the Guinness World Book of Records.
Now, we are going to have our cameras there, are we not? We
are,
want to miss something like this. I mean, anybody can have a fireworks display. We've seen lots of those already.
Well,
but we haven't seen any simul-kissing contests.
Yeah. Fireworks Schmeierworks has become the unofficial slogan of the PEI Millennium Celebration. It's all about kissing here, Peter. And like I said, people are very, very excited about tonight, showing that what this island lacks in population, it more than makes up for in spirit. And in fact, I'm standing here on Great George Street in Charlottetown. This is a pivotal spot in terms of the birthplace of the country, because this at one point was red PEI mud that led from the Charlottetown Harbor to Province House, where the Fathers of Confederation determined our fate as a country. And believe it or not, after all these years, they are still standing here today. And believe it or not, Peter, just to give you an indication as to how long they've been around, their sideburns have become stylish again, which I think is pretty remarkable. So,
a number of times.
A number of times. If you can remember it, you shouldn't be wearing it. You, sir, identify yourself.
John A. MacDonald, Attorney General of Canada West.
Now, you'll notice, John A. MacDonald, that the rest of us have foresight into your life that you don't have. Not yet Sir John A. MacDonald. But I think if you hold tight, that's coming down the pipe. So how are you?
I'm very well, and yourself?
Very well, thank you. So what is your secret to anti-aging?
Oh, that's a good question. Perhaps a sherry in the morning and sherry in the evening?
Yes. Sherry all around. Well, very good.
Sherry for everyone.
And here you guys come and go a-wassailing. That's a bit of trivia for you, Peter. Do you know what a wassail is?
No, you got me there.
It is, in fact, warm beer with spices.
And why would you do that?
Why would you drink warm beer with spices? I think because these guys are obviously underdressed for the minus 800 temperature here. And by coming here a-wassailing, that's how they're able to come here, period.
Okay.
Next to you, identify yourself, sir.
Georges-Étienne Cartier from Montreal East.
From Montreal East. And how did you get here?
Well, I came by train and, of course, an ice boat with Mr. McGee here.
With Mr. McGee. Hello, Mr. McGee.
Good day, sir.
You look awfully young, I have to say. What was the average age of the Fathers of Confederation?
Well, I am one of the younger ones, of course. I'm 39 years old, but about 40, most of us are in our 40s, there's a few in our 50s, and then the aged one is Colonel Grey, 64 years old.
64 years old, my goodness. Now, what is the most often asked question of you Fathers of Confederation?
Well, a lot of people seem to be curious why the meeting wasn't held somewhere more important, they always say.
And how do you answer that question?
Oh, well, you must be from Ontario.
That sounds to me a perfectly reasonable explanation. Thank you very much to the Fathers of Confederation for joining us. So right now, as you can see behind me, the stage is being set. The Province House is a-tingle. Everyone here is very excited. Some spectacular events. 17,000 people expected, which I think is roughly the staff of the Broadcast Centre in Toronto. Peter?
Yeah, and like all of them are here today, and they're looking forward to talking to you when you get back.
Absolutely, I bet they are.
Listen, great hit, and we're looking forward to talking to you a number of times throughout the afternoon and into the evening. Jonathan
We are standing by.
Okay, that's great. Jonathan's reporting to us, obviously, from Charlottetown. Well, from Charlottetown, we go to the other side of the world, China, 2 minutes away from the arrival of the new millennium, the year 2000, straightening out their feed there from Beijing. Some of the entertainment that's going on in Beijing as they get ready for the clock to tick over. A minute and a half away now. Interesting for the Chinese, because this, I think, is what, year 4697 on the Chinese calendar, and there had been some resistance. We'll talk to Raymond Saint-Pierre in a few minutes, Alison, about this. There had been some resistance on the part of the Chinese to get too heavily involved into the year 2000 celebration.
It's interesting. I mean, China's not alone in that. In other countries, too. When you think of Indonesia, for example, a predominantly Muslim country that doesn't recognize the same calendar, but are also participating in these millennial celebrations. It's part of globalization, in a sense. It's part of being part of the world community.
I'll say, because if they were resisting, they've sure changed their mind. I mean, look at this. This is quite the display in Beijing as they get ready for the clock to count down the final 30 seconds. We're having a little trouble with the audio from Beijing, but hopefully we'll be able to get that up in the next few moments and see just what's on store as the members of the Chinese leadership are ready to welcome in the official way. 5 seconds.
And that torch on what they're calling a millennial altar that was carried into Beijing by a Chinese gymnast, Li Ning, who's now a businessman, but was best known, I suppose, as a world and Olympic champion.
And we saw him, the torch being lit and him leaving the site of Peking Man, which is about 40 kilometers outside of Beijing. So they made that run in fairly brisk time. The fireworks now going off high above Beijing. It has been one of the universal things about the moment has been the fireworks, and we know there are tremendous displays planned through Europe and here in North America, various cities in this country. It's kind of hard for one place to outdo the other when it comes to fireworks. They're all pretty spectacular.
They are. And you can also see, I don't know if you could catch a glimpse of the dragon dancing that was going on down below as well.
Now, there have been some concerns about China and how it was going to deal with the Y2K bug. We keep reminding you that here we are now into, we got here 6 hours since the first community passed into the new millennium. We have no reports of any serious Y2K problems. We've run through New Zealand, Australia, Japan and South Korea, just to name a few. China was one country where the experts are saying, better be careful here, monitor the situation closely in China, especially outside of Beijing, as to whether there could be problems.
I guess, too, it depends how technology dependent you are, particularly in the middle of the night. Some of these problems may not surface for a few hours or a few days or weeks.
Chinese leaders...
looking like Western politicians in that crowd, Peter.
I mean, China has changed so dramatically over the last few years. We're going to slip over here to the... What do we got here?
This is New Zealand, I think. Chatham Islands.
That's
To
right.
the first sunrise.
The first sunrise of the new millennium anywhere in the world. A special ceremony that's taking place.
This is an ancient Moriori chant. They are the original Polynesian settlers in New Zealand.
Hard to describe that as just another sunrise. The first sunrise of the year 2000. Back to China. A little cooler in Beijing than it was in the Chatham Islands in the South Pacific off New Zealand. They're part of New Zealand, by the way, about 500 miles off the mainland. celebrations live from Beijing as they're 6 minutes into the new millennium. And every shot seems to underscore just how much China has changed over these past not too many years. This shot especially, as they're obviously locked in there, having a little bit of satellite transmission difficulty. However, I do think we have on the line from Beijing, there he is, Raymond St-Pierre, the CBC's correspondent in Beijing. Raymond, it's Peter in Toronto. Can you hear me?
I barely hear you, Peter. You should hear the noise around me here. It's very, very difficult to hear you. What I can tell you is that President Jiang Zemin, the flame you saw him light earlier in this celebration is the eternal flame. It's meant to represent the 16 billion Chinese people who lived through the 5,000 years of Chinese civilization. So that's the theme of the celebration here at this new monument that they just inaugurated tonight, the Century Monument. And it's a huge celebration. 25,000 people were invited here to be part of it. They were chosen. It's not people who just walk in from the street. They were chosen because of security reasons. They don't want anybody to disturb the peace here or to spoil the party. So they were very careful to invite university students, shop workers and people like that who they knew they were not part of any sect or any opposition or any other kind of movement.
Let me try this, Raymond. I'll try and get a question to you if you can hear me a little better.
Yeah, I hear you better now.
Okay, great. It is a spectacular scene there. Is it symbolic in a way of how China has changed and hopes to continue to change into the new millennium?
I think that's the message tonight, that we're about to see the renaissance of China, and this is the start of it, this brand new monument where China is not afraid to go back on thousands of years of civilization. And Jiang Zemin a few minutes ago, I don't know if you remember a few days ago when during the handover of Macau, Jiang Zemin said the next step is Taiwan. Well, tonight Jiang Zemin just said China's renaissance will come when reunification is complete. So it's a theme, it's a recurring theme, and we'll hear him for the months to come talking again and again about Taiwan coming back to China. And Jiang Zemin wants it to be his legacy, and he will do everything he can in the next months to bring back Taiwan in the fold, one way or the other.
Well, is that not only going to increase the tensions in that part of the world?
It could, because in the next few weeks, after the celebration here of the Lunar New Year, it's in February, after this celebration, you will have that presidential election in Taiwan. And you've got people there who say, you know, Taiwan is a nation. It's not a rebel province, a renegade province of China, and we have to be on par. We have to talk, you know, eye to eye. We are a nation. And here, Jiang Zemin and the Chinese leadership don't like it at all. The relations have been very tense in the last few months. If a solution is not found soon, you will see the tension increase very soon.
Raymond, we've got to ask you about the Y2K issue. Obviously, it is in bit of concern in all parts of the world. We haven't seen any problems so far as the clock ticks over into 2000, east of you and now into China. What's the expectation there? Because the international experts say, watch China, there could be problems. What's the expectation there?
Well, the main problem here is that most of the software, the programs people use to run their computers are pirated here. 90% of them, even the government, the ministries, most of them have these pirated programs, and many of them contain some kind of virus or are 2000 bug, susceptible. So that could be the problem in the next few days. I don't think the lights will turn off during the night, or that we won't have heating at home. I don't think so, but we'll have problems in transportation, in banking, in energy, heating, I think, at home in the next few days when these bugs start popping up, when we start having problems with these viruses. But I don't think there will be a huge crisis. Computers here have come quite late, much later than in your part of the world, and lots of things still work the old-fashioned way here, so there won't be a crisis, I don't think so.
Raymond, it's been great talking to you. I'm going to let you get back there and enjoy the celebrations. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Happy Millennium to you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, Raymond St-Pierre reporting to us from Beijing. Well, from China we go to the Philippines, Makati City in the Philippines.
We point to our neighbors' opulence, to care for our world as much as we care for ourselves, because you gave us this world to ensure our existence. we lift our hearts and minds and surrender to your almighty power. Shower us with your divine mercy to renew ourselves. And may the Filipino people and the rest of the world, created in your own image and likeness, worthy to be called your children, not only in this new millennium, but for all time.
And just so you know, this is on a tape delay because the Philippines welcomed the new year at the same time China did. And this is
Regine Velasquez, who's performing on a platform that's on the tip of the Manila Peninsula. And this is going to be coordinated with the celebrations that are on the main stage in Makati City as well.
Happy New Year from the Philippines. We're going to do a quick tour of different parts of this time zone that just celebrated the New Year in the last 12 minutes. China we've seen, the Philippines. We're going to go to Taiwan, as Raymond Saint-Pierre mentioned, is obviously in the news today, along with China, Singapore, and Hong Kong. This is the Philippines.
1 minute and 30 seconds to go. Napapanood po ito via satellite sa buong mundo. Handa na ba kayo? Handa na!
And there they are waving to the world in the Philippines tonight.
5 seconds to
Just
go.
waiting to count down.
Well, they counted down, and that tape was rolled out. So no problems in the Philippines. That was a tape switch from the midnight ceremonies. This, I believe now, is Taiwan. Yes, it's Taiwan. And, you know, as Raymond says, as this tape was being taken in Taiwan, it's right at the moment Jiang Zemin, the Chinese leader, was saying once again that his plan, his hope, is for unification of all of China, which to him includes Taiwan.
This is a special lantern ceremony, Peter, and it's also to commemorate the earthquake in September that killed so many people here and damaged so many buildings, left people homeless. Thousands of years ago, these lanterns that they're using tonight were used to pass on important messages and signals to each other between villages. Now they've carried this on as an annual festivity.
And there are the fireworks. 15 minutes ago in Taiwan, this is once again a tape delay, as the new year, the new millennium, 2000, reaches Taiwan.
And those lanterns rise into the sky.
Now that's different. Everyone's trying to get their different looks, so they don't all look exactly the same.
Those are quite remarkable.
They are.
They've been lit one by one. Just like hundreds of little hot air balloons.
Yeah. Wonder where they're going to land. Now, they had a terrible earthquake in Taiwan just a couple of months ago. And part of the ceremonies tonight have been dedicated to the victims of that earthquake. It killed over 2,300 people, injured 10,000 more, destroyed or damaged 79,000 homes.
请我们的公共电视董事长吴董事长，还有我们的院长王金平先生，以及我们台北县大家长苏贞昌县长一起走向主舞台。
现场的朋友，我们一起说新年快乐！
预备起
Happy New Year！ 千禧年快乐！
千禧年快乐！我们在小朋友的歌声当中呢，把这首世界赛传送出去，它代表了就是我们的爱、希望以及祈求世界和平的心愿。希望在借由天灯的冉冉上升之中，把我们的温暖、把我们的祝福、把我们台湾的特色、台湾的团结、台湾的强韧、台湾所有一切最好的东西，传达到世界上的每一个角落，好不好？现在在我们台上的是我们这个非常重要的3位长官。首先，我们就是要谢谢我们的院长王金平王院长，然后谢谢我们的主办单位的台。
All right. Taiwan to Singapore. And once again, this in a tape delay. This was the moment of the arrival of the new millennium in
Midnight
Singapore,
Singapore, and
18
all
minutes
eyes
ago.
will be focused on the heart of Singapore, Orchard Road. For this tiny island with big ambitions,
Well, if you listen carefully, Peter, you might recognize this tune.
Sounds a little Ricky Martin there.
I bet even Ricky hasn't heard his song played like this before.
By 15 Chinese drummers who are booming through Orchard Road in downtown Singapore. Huge street party taking place there. Like these guys could show Ricky Martin a few moves.
That one they all got down.
Yeah. Mixing a little of their past with a little of everybody's present in this era of the international hit, Ricky Martin's La Vida Loca.
New kicks and candlelight. She's got a new addiction. Oh, every day and night. Make you take your clothes off and go dancing in the rain. She'll make you live her crazy life, but she'll take away your pain like a bullet through your brain. Outside, inside out. She's giving the vida loca. She'll push and pull you down. Living the vida loca. Her lips are never red. It's the color loca. She will wear you out. Living the vida loca. Living la vida loca. Just living la vida
tough to leave that. But we're leaving Singapore to go to Hong Kong.
It'll be quite a party in Hong Kong, too.
Yeah, it sure will.
This is the Hong Kong racetrack, and look at that. What a way to arrive.
Hong Kong known, of course, for, among many other things, its devotion to the racetracks. And so it's no surprise they're having their big celebration in the Hong Kong racetrack tonight. This again, a tape delay. Hong Kong's been in the year 2000 for 22 minutes now, but this is what it looked like when the moment arrived.
This is a special Millennium theme song for Hong Kong, especially composed for tonight.
卸下了千載的萬狀，盛放千載的花，輸出千載的香，大地上一切亦漂亮。聯合這世界，天地同盟，為這新世紀開張。讓我將我心燃亮，將眼睛擦亮，同為這盛世成強光。 指出遠景新去向，每顆心與心聯繫，不竭的勉勵，同為這大勢平放亮，合力迎盛世。
前夕经历多少变动，依旧有东方的巨龙。
巨龙，巨龙，飞入现代天空，实现那5000年的梦。
踏進新的千禧，大地互助互利，人同人牽引互動，強調愛與説，推動和平，盛世推向更高峰。讓我將我心燃亮。 眼睛擦亮，同為這盛世成強光，指出遠景新去向，每顆心與心聯繫，不竭的勉勵，同為這大勢平放亮，合力迎盛世。 萬眾在靜待千禧的曙光，這個世界，看看這個世界，卸下了千載的萬狀。盛放千載的花，輸出千載的香，大地上一切亦漂亮。聯合這世界，天地同盟，為這新世紀開張。讓我將我心燃亮。 同為這盛世成強光，指出遠景新去向，每顆心與心聯繫，不竭的勉勵，同為這大勢平放亮，合力迎盛世。
嘅主唱人啊！
我要小黑嘅意思
犀利喎！阿小黑哥，你正話喺嗰度飛落嚟嗰陣，你驚唔
This is what it
驚
looked
啊？
like in Hong Kong
我驚喎，
roughly
但
half
我
an
見
hour
到你
ago
好鎮定，好威
when the year 2000 ticked in
好啊，嗱，而家
in Hong Kong, as it did in Singapore, Taiwan, and Beijing. We've seen them all here in the last half hour. This
多謝晒。
on a tape delay.
好啦，咁啊嗱，講翻咧，正話阿小黑哥咧飛落嚟嗰陣咧，我就見到阿鄭伊健啊、
And the congratulations and the
阿
celebrations.
張國榮啊等等。
Japping the wings there in the background
我哋可唔可以咧
made quite the entrance.
睇翻片段，睇下咩情況，係咪啊？得唔得？有嘛？有嘅，呢隻翼飛落。
Well, and that wraps up part of our coverage from the Far East, and it also wraps up my time. We've been here since, roughly 4:30 this morning, Toronto time, so it's been an interesting 7 hours watching the year 2000 arrive. Paris, Rome.
That's going to be spectacular.
A day to remember.
As
What
we
did
watch
Marshall McLuhan call us a global village, and today we're proving it.
Absolutely.
Had a great time with this.
Thank you, I will, and I'll see you a little later this afternoon.
Okay.
Our next midnight celebration is in fact going to be in Indonesia. We're going to show you that right after this.
Bar none, it has to be Banting and Best. In 1921, they discovered insulin. And the way they did this is they actually removed a pancreas from one dog who showed signs of diabetes. And they took a pancreas from another dog and created a solution and injected it into the original dog. That dog made a miraculous recovery, and they actually were able to discover insulin. And in 1923, Charles Best won the Nobel Peace Prize for Science for discovering insulin.
"2000 Today, a Millennium Celebration," is presented to you in part by Pontiac. Pontiac, built for drivers.
We believe in ourselves. We always try his best.
Pride. That's what Donald Barkington's winning coin design is all about. Look for a new 25-cent Millennium coin each month and celebrate a future full of promise.
If we ever make it to the other end of the ice.
On February 6th, the 2000 NHL All-Star Game will be in Toronto. Hockey Night in Canada will be there, and MasterCard wants you to be there too. You could win 2 tickets to the 2000 NHL All-Star Weekend in Toronto. Get in on the fun at NHL Fantasy. See the FedEx NHL Super Skills and enjoy great seats at the big game. To enter, check out the latest issue of the Hockey News for a ballot, or visit the CBC Sports website. Your ultimate NHL fantasy. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Could this be the fairy tale couple the royal family has been waiting for?
Sophie is Diana without the dramas and Fergie without the frivolities.
Prince Edward and Sophie Rhys-Jones.
Happen to love each other as well, very much.
The true story, Sunday morning.
This cabin isn't big enough for the 3 of us.
Renovating an old shack on the ranch is a major task. On a special night of nothing too good for a cowboy.
I'll drive with that little boogeyman.
Sunday night at 7 on CBC.
It was a long trip, but we miss the people that are at home in Nigeria. We like it here. I have friends from around the world. The weather here is different for us because we only have 2 seasons in our country. Here it's 4, but it's very nice here.
Welcome back. to 2000 today, our around-the-clock millennial broadcast from our headquarters here in downtown Toronto. We've been taking you around the globe, and in fact, that's what we're going to do over the course, again, of the next few hours. We're less than 30 minutes now from midnight in Indonesia, and of course in Europe. The sun is setting on this last day of the millennium. Just a few moments ago, if you've been watching with us, we've watched the midnight hour strike in the Far East, in China, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in Singapore. Over the past few days, we have asked all of our foreign correspondents around the globe to think about the millennium and the regions and the countries that they represent. We're going to take you now directly to London, to the CBC's Anne Macmillan, who has been watching the festivities unfold there. And give me a sense, first of all, I can see that Trafalgar Square behind you is all lit up. Give us a sense of the moment.
Well, lots of people are certainly coming into central London, Alison. In about 1 hour from now, the police are closing off all the roads to cars so that there's going to be a pedestrian zone right through the middle of London. And the police are expecting up to 4 million people. The weather isn't too bad, it's mild, and the rain, we're told, is going to hold off until after midnight. So there are going to be fireworks, the Thames is going to be a river of fire right as soon as Big Ben starts gonging midnight. And the Queen is going to be going down the Thames and opening the Dome and starting a beacon. It's going to be fabulous.
Well, you know, even as you anticipate all of those people in central London, certainly in North America, there has been a sense that many people just want to stay home. Is that the same?
Well, not in London, but in the rest of Britain, people are saying that about 65% of people are going to be staying at home and having parties quietly with their nearest and dearest. But London has always been a great place for New Year's Eve, and I think this year the boast is that this is the biggest organized event anywhere in the world.
Well, of course, around Britain, as you said, there are various events. I know that there are events taking place in Edinburgh as well. What we can see now is a beating retreat ceremony that took place in Edinburgh. This, of course, is an ancient ceremony, Anne, with this one's got 200 pipers in full ceremonial dress that are going to go along the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. Macmillan, and there is in all of the celebration around this a sense of reflection too.
Oh, very much so, Alison. The British history over the past 100 years has been absolutely fascinating and quite revealing in many ways. It started out with 100 years ago, Queen Victoria was on the throne. Today, we're in a very different country.
Of course, we also know that the royal family, as you mentioned, is going to take part in some of these celebrations as well, which we will see later on. But, you know, there was a phrase, Anne, that I suppose that the sun never set on the British Empire at one point. That kind of picture has certainly changed.
It certainly has, Alison. At the beginning of the century, as I said, Britain ruled the waves, certainly.
Thank you very much for this, Anne. We look forward to talking to you again over the course of the evening and checking in on the celebrations in London. But right now I want to take a look at some of the work that Anne has done in preparation for the celebrations and for the millennium. As I mentioned a moment ago, there was a phrase that said the sun never set on the British Empire. And that, I suppose, points to the significance of Britain, not only in the last century, but for many years before that as well. We've asked all our foreign correspondents to reflect on the millennium and what it means in the part of the world they're covering. Here's Anne Macmillan's report.
Back to the future. The events and the people who shaped Britain during the past 100 years. The century began with Queen Victoria. It ends with Queen Elizabeth. But two other women who did not reign had a lasting impact as well.
Princess Diana was an enormous milestone in many ways, I think, partly because she represented the whole history of the British public's relationship with the monarchy over the century. And that's flipped completely from a position of authority and power and respect to a situation where people have, to some extent, a deep love and need for the monarchy, but I don't think the respect and the trust and the feeling that they are actually someone who can influence their lives is there anymore. Princess Diana was kind of like the last great icon for, I think, the people who felt there was something about the monarchy that they could sort of hold close to them that actually made a difference to their lives.
And then there was Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister known as the Iron Lady.
I think this country, part of its DNA, the people that grew up in the 70s and 80s, is Thatcher. People were very polarised by her approach. Her approach was incredibly uncompromising. You had to love it or hate it. There was absolutely no middle ground. So I think the legacy today is people are still a bit scarred, but they're a bit scared of that. They don't want to commit too much either way.
Each decade of the past century has had its own innovators and heroes. But a single event determined the fate of Britain in more ways than one.
There's no doubt that by far the biggest historical high point was the Second World War. I think the Second World War was such an important event that it became impossible for the country to get over it.
Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye.
Because it had been such a great victory, we could not resist looking back to it and back to it and back to it. It was one of those moments when Britain played an absolutely crucial world role, the last such moment. This country has had such a past, culminating in that war, but its leaders have failed, in my view, to direct it sufficiently energetically towards the future. So the war became an albatross round our necks because it distracted us from what we should be paying attention to.
At the end of this century, most Britons realize their country is no longer a world power. They're searching for a new role in the future.
The 21st century is interesting for Britain because it's actually got to find its identity again. If you look at Britain as a person, it's like somebody who kind of knows that they used to be really important and were respected for what they did, and they know that they don't do that anymore, and they still want that level of authority and respect, but they can't quite figure out what they should be doing.
To be honest, one of the things that strikes me sitting here
the end of the 20th century is I don't feel very British. I feel much more European. I feel much more plugged into a World Wide Web network, if it doesn't sound too much of a cliche.
I believe that the historic sort of moment for Britain, the important thing that's going to happen at the beginning of the century is how it becomes fully a European country. What contribution it's going to make, finally, to the evolution of a more integrated Europe. How it sheds, finally, the memories of the past which have held it back from really taking up that destiny.
No country has lost as much as Britain over the past 100 years because no country had so much going into this century. The empire is gone, and now Britain is preparing to take up the challenge of a new destiny in a new millennium. Anne Macmillan, CBC News, London.
We're going to spend a few moments now to report on some of the other big news stories happening today. 155 hostages held for 8 days on a hijacked jet in Afghanistan are free. Jean Chrétien said Yeltsin's determination and vision had transformed Russia and given it a place among democratic nations. In the United States, President Bill Clinton also paid tribute to Yeltsin. Clinton said Yeltsin was always straightforward and kept his promises. In Quebec, firefighters spent most of the night fighting to bring a huge fire east of Montreal under control. It happened when two freight trains collided, setting off a massive fireball. One of the trains was carrying gasoline and diesel fuel. A conductor and engineer are presumed dead. The fire forced several hundred people out of their homes. Well, 2000 is already hours old in parts of the world, and so far at least the computers are still working and the lights are on. The new year has begun in the South Pacific and parts of Asia without the Y2K bug messing things up. Here's Kelly Crow.
Quietly, peacefully, the new millennium broke over this tiny South Pacific island with a message for the world.
My dear child, take this torch of peace and hope from Kiribati so that it may light the whole world.
Then the skies across the globe lit up with the universal symbol of a new year as the clock struck midnight through the time zones. And there were the millennium firsts, first baby, first wedding, first golf swing. While fireworks act as the universal welcome, each culture is marking the millennium milestone in its own unique way. And with Y2K already several hours old, the lights are coming on and the systems are working. So as the sun rose over New Zealand, the rest of the world is breathing a little easier as the year 2000 dawns trouble-free, at least so far. Kelly Crow, CBC News.
And now with the view from here on this New Year's Eve, Susan Bonner has the story of Canada, ready for a party and ready for Y2K.
The sun rises on the Canadian capital on the last day of the millennium. In Ottawa and on the country's east coast, it looks pretty much like any other day. Well, there are the party preparations and lots of last-minute shopping. People stocking up just in case any Y2K fears come true.
Water's the top seller. We're selling probably 2 to 3 times the amount of water that we sell in a regular week.
But there is little panic this New Year's Eve. Just ask this lone early morning shopper in Toronto.
I thought there would be lots of people out, and I thought it would be a real madhouse this morning, but pretty calm. I'm the only guy here, so got my shopping done and off to work.
There's always that small chance that something might happen that's beyond everybody's expectations.
But officials say they are ready. Every province has a command center scrutinizing the computers that run security, power, communications, the banks.
I feel very confidently can deal with whatever we're confronted with.
Canadian officials are watching what happens in New Zealand closely because systems here are similar to those in that country. So far, New Zealand has experienced no major Y2K problems. Susan Bonner, CBC News, Ottawa.
A man charged with the attempted murder of George Harrison will be held in a psychiatric unit. Police say 33-year-old Michael Abram of Liverpool broke into Harrison's mansion early on Thursday and plunged a long knife into the former Beatle's chest, narrowly missing his heart. Harrison's wife, Olivia, saved his life by hitting the attacker over the head with a lamp. And that's the brief look at the other stories making news today. Of course, the big story that we're following around the clock is the turn of the calendar to the year 2000. We have watched the sun rise already in parts of the globe on this new millennium. And over the next little while, we're going to, in fact, take you back to New Zealand for a sunrise finale with Dame Kiri Te Kanawa on the beach with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. This is live